Give me a word on our situation now with the Epstein files and what we know, the redactions, which seem to be overrunning what they were planning on and what they were legislatively compelled to release, right, David?
Well, Donald Trump, who's been thumbing his nose at the law all over the place, is thumbing his nose at Congress here. And it's very clear from the reports from members of Congress, including, as you just put up, Jamie Raskin, that this is not sloppy work. This is intentional. They put this out with limited redactions that have allowed several of the young women who have never gone public to be identified. That's sending a message. You push this and we will make your life miserable. On the other hand, they've said to their friends, just, don't cause any problems. We're taking care of you, and keeping their names up. Their names totally blacked out. I think that this is incredibly unwise. This will not go over well with those within the MAGA crowd who want to know what's happening. Contrast what's happening here to how the British and some other foreign governments have taken the information from the Epstein disclosures and run with them. I mean, Keir Starmer may have to resign as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, even though he never did anything wrong. He just appointed as an ambassador one of Epstein's creepy friends. And the question for Starmer is, well, why didn't you know about this?
Right, but that's the point. He didn't know about it, supposedly. I mean, right? That's his claim. Hey, I didn't know.
He didn't. I mean, it raises questions about, gentlemen rather than vetting people properly. And on top of this, I think the really most disturbing thing just came out. I've had people for years tell me that, and I never investigated Epstein's files. I worked on Trump's money. But I've had people say to me, well, they disappeared people. There were inconvenient girls they had to get rid of and others. And I'm like, yeah, right. Being very skeptical about that. But it turns out Jeffrey Epstein apparently ordered 350 gallons of sulfuric acid. There have been murder cases in which people use sulfuric acid to dissolve a body, does it very quickly, eliminates the DNA, leaves some trace elements behind. But if you're really good about it, it's probably one of the best ways to get rid of evidence that somebody was killed or died. And that needs really to be explored. That's a very troubling development here, because why in the world would anyone who is in the manufacturing business order 350 gallons of this toxic acid?
There was that FBI report from the head cop down in Florida who said that once the investigation began into Jeffrey Epstein and the word got out, Trump actually called him and said, glad you're doing this. This is a bad guy, and focus on Ghislaine Maxwell. She's evil. That's a quote. And I was wondering, was he looking for cover? Was he trying to save face in advance, or what was the motivation?
This
Trump
is an
so
old
well.
Game. Yeah, this is an old game Donald has played in the past very successfully more than once. If he thinks he's in some kind of danger with law enforcement, he has reached out to law enforcement to both rat out the people he was involved with and to offer himself so that they will go after the other person and not him. I'm going to give you information, but you're going to have to promise not to do anything to me. He did this when he was in his early 30s, he had 4 separate federal grand juries investigating him. He ran out the clock on one. He turned somebody else in on another. He agreed to cooperate on a third. I don't remember what happened to the fourth one at the moment, but in Atlantic City, he told the FBI he'd be willing to help them put an agent into his casinos. And it was part of an effort to blunt an inquiry into something else. Probably the best example in the country of doing this kind of behavior was Sam Zell, the very Trump-like Chicago real estate developer, was like Donald, a big tax cheat. And when the Justice Department was persuaded by the IRS to go after, I think it was Zell's brother, but it may have been his business partner, and he learned of this, he immediately went to the government and said, here, I can give you all this, I can give you lots of documents and testimony if you just indict the other guy instead of me, which is what happened. So this is not a new trick among people in white collar crime. And one of the things I hope the audience thinks about is, and I'm thinking about it because I'm teaching a criminal justice course this semester, and I'm going to teach one next semester. We focus very heavily on street crime, but we need to recognize that depending on how you analyze the data, white collar crime costs America between 10 and 20 times as much in the damage done. And because we're not thinking about it, we're not funding it, and we have a series of rules that help white collar criminals slip off the hook. It's as if you're fishing for bass, but you don't have a barb on the back of the hook. It's getting worse and worse. And we have these white collar crime families like the Trumps. We're now into the fourth generation of the white collar Trump crime family. They don't kill people, best we know, but the way they steal is contracts, lies, failure to meet agreements, etc. And you get in their way, they make difficulty for you. They find various ways to tie you up legally, threaten you, not with breaking your legs, but with economic ruin.
Well, I want to get to, in a few minutes, the situation with the grift that continues on another level with the Trump family. But because you've touched on it, many white-collar criminals, I mean, we're talking about, I would think, numbers, hundreds of millions of dollars in damages that have been forgiven because of the pardon machine.
Oh, no, we're talking about, we're talking about, I mean, the cost of just the whole incarceration system, broadly measured, not what we spend on jails and prisons and probation and parole officers, but including lost wages, medical damage, shortened lives, etc. The best estimate, and it's well written, I just had all my students read this paper, well researched, is more than $1 trillion a year. Now that's about 3% of the economy. So one way you could say is, well, it's not that much money. But gee, what if we could just cut that in half? We could save $500 million, $500 billion a year just by reducing our intense, and I would argue, over incarceration of people.
Well, and what I was speaking of also was the way, because you were talking about white-collar criminals, and the reality is that white-collar criminals under the Trump administration have been given pardons in a pipeline that is just, it would seem endless. I mean, it's an incredible thing to see.
I think, Mark, it's indisputable that Donald Trump is selling pardons, and he is immune from granting the pardons. He can't have any action taken against him, the Supreme Court says, for the official act of granting a pardon. But running a racket in which they are selling pardons, they're selling them to enormous drug dealers, people who move tons of cocaine, which is consumed by the fraction of a gram. We're talking about tons, hundreds of tons in some cases, and all sorts of other despicable characters, including, by the way, child rapists, taking money for that, even indirectly, even directing it to people around you. Oh, that's a crime, and that's not covered by that cockamamie 2023 Supreme Court decision that a president cannot be prosecuted for official acts. Those are not official acts. Those are criminal enterprises.
I will get to the ICE situation. So much to cover with you with Trump every week, but because we're on the corruption, I just want to follow it through to another level. The New York Times did some really great reporting on this 250th gala that Trump is going to celebrate in Washington. It was meant to be, because as you can imagine, there's been a ramp up to this for some time now, a kind of people's celebration of the United States. Instead, what has happened is that they are open for business at the White House, and for $1 million a plate, you'll get special access to the president. And this is another way to funnel money from donors and from others who just want access, or just, if they're rich, want the brag, to be in and around the White House. So this is another form of the ballroom. It's another form of his inauguration committee. All of these things from the very first hours of his presidency were associated with the funnel of money going into Trump pockets.
Well, on one level, you could say, how's this different than allowing people to sleep in the Lincoln bedroom? Remember, the Republicans were very upset in the past, Democratic presidents having donors come and they'd stay at the White House in the Lincoln bedroom. Well, I'd say there's a big difference. Allowing someone to sleep in the government's bedroom is not at all like taking in $1 million through an affiliate. And yes, everything is for sale. I mean, Donald Trump has no understanding whatsoever of our Constitution, of the concept of service. He never did one day of services in his entire life before January 20th, 2017. And he absolutely has no honor. He has no concept. I mean, that's when and if we get past this dictatorship, we need to do a lot of work, because there will be other people now who will get or try to get to the White House who lack honor. And we've run the whole system on the theory that, well, you might on the margin do some things we don't approve of, but nobody who's a full out, all the time, grifting con artist crook is going to trash everything to make money. No, those days are over.
Freedom 250 is what it's called. And again, it's like the Ballroom Project. And companies with interest before the administration can make tax-deductible donations to gain access to and seek favor with a president who has maintained a keen interest in fundraising, as you said, David, and a willingness to use the levers of government and power to reward financial supporters. So, again, keep it in mind, Freedom 250 is what it's called. And there are planned events in Washington at the monuments, et cetera. And it'll be, he's in this fund, he's looking to fund that arch in Washington, that also the IndyCar race that he wants to do in Washington. I mean, it's another level, but this is the method by which this fundraising is going to take place.
Mark, a little sidelight to this, if I can. It's important to understand when you hear about the ballroom, the way he's redone the White House, this just tackiness. It's like 1950s Texas landowners who discovered oil and suddenly had all this money and no idea what to do. That is just fundamental to Donald's nature. And when Trump Tower was being built, his brother Robert's wife at the time, Blaine Trump, who very classy lady, I like Blaine, took him to see a desk to buy for his office. And it was a Louis XIV style, Sun King era, beautiful European desk, ornate, the things that you would think Trump would like. And the price on it was, it wasn't $15,000, $20,000. So maybe in today's money, $40,000, $50,000. And he's brought to see this thing, and Donald looks at it and goes, yeah, it's a brown desk. And the man has no discernment. He has no capacity to appreciate art and beauty. He's the only president during his first term, and maybe something's happened and I missed it in the second term, but he's never had an artist like, say, Yo-Yo Ma come and perform at the White House. Every other president of the United States has done that. Literally every other president. Not Donald.